All right, I know you've been waiting a whole week for this video. Let's talk about NIST Cybersecurity Framework, and let's talk about the detect function. Hi, welcome back. I'm Chris Burns from Techie Gurus, and let's talk about detect. Specifically the detect function instead of the NIST CSF. So one of the things that we got to think about is when we've already identified the risk to our business, we've identified what kind of policies and procedures we have, what our risk appetite is. Now we've set protections in place to kind of protect our business against that. Now we have to move on to detect. So think about it like a house. You have a house, you protect it with fences, doors, windows, locks, right? What happens when they get by that? A thief gets by that. That's when you move into the detection phase. It's the same thing with your network. You put a firewall at the edge, but what happens when somebody gets by that? Or maybe even gets by your antivirus. So we have to think from a layer of, okay, how do we detect things? Now in a home, you can have a dog, you could have an alarm system, something like that, to where it will detect that something is happening and an alert will be created. So in your network, what we have to think about is antivirus. And not just any antivirus, we have to move on to EDR, which is like extended detection and response, on everything. What does that give us? That gives us a lot of telemetry on what's going on a specific device so we can actually make appropriate decisions. So that's where the tech comes in. Next, we have to move on and we have to collect logs from everything. I'm talking your firewall, your servers, your workstations, your networking equipment. We want to collect those logs and store them because that helps us detect when something is an anomaly on your network. And next, we need to move in and start looking at your network connections. So on a firewall, the firewall is one part of the protection. What you can put on a firewall is you can implement IPS and IDS, so intrusion prevention systems and intrusion detection systems. The difference is IPS will block traffic, IDS doesn't, it just detects it and responds to it. It just alerts you to it. So a lot of places will have just IDS turned on and then have a monitoring system set in place where people are watching it to see if something's happening. The other thing you should do on your firewall and any network connection, especially with people work from home, is being able to see where their networks are connected. Being able to see what network connections you have on a computer. Now that's important because there are things called command and control servers. And what happens is if somebody downloads a piece of malware, a remote access Trojan, or what's called a rat, they could have a connection that's going from their computer back to a command and control center server and give a threat actor access into their computer. So it's important to look at that and actually know that. Here's the thing. Now, most of our communication is encrypted. So we have to have things in place to actually kind of man-in-the-middle attack our own traffic, but decrypt that traffic and re-encrypt it on the other side so we can see what's inside of it. That can get very expensive depending on if it's hardware or software based and how you're doing it. But it's something that's important because most traffic now is encrypted, including what threat actors use. So let's recap real quick. We want to make sure that we can see what's going on a computer. So EDR, right? Not just antivirus. Let's go beyond that. Let's collect the logs, and that's where SIM comes in. So a SIM is a security information and event management system. You need to also be doing like intrusion detection or intrusion prevention, preferably the latter, but that's not always the case. That can cause some problems, so intrusion detection at least. And you have to be monitoring all of the network connections from all your computers to make sure that they're not going to a malicious server. Seems easy, right? That's why when you start putting the framework in, you start seeing where your gaps are. This is a huge gap in most networks that we see. Detection is a huge problem. You have to put things in place to detect. So next time we're going to talk about respond. That's what happens after we detect something. How do we respond to it? But until then, stay cyber safe.